Hello everyone, Mackenzie Norton here, and I'm going to tell you all about a 5E lesson plan today. This lesson plan is designed to teach 5th graders how climate differs from weather. And we can start off the lesson by engaging the students with a question, which is our first E in the 5E sequence. The teacher asks the students, if someone were to travel to our area for the first time during this time of year, what would you tell them to bring to wear, and why? And the students are then asked to answer the questions in their science notebooks. And this question, I think, is so unique because it can be used for all types of climates and can be used anywhere, wherever you are. So I think that's just a great question to start off with. And our next phase is explore in the 5E sequence. And the teacher provides charts from the National Weather Service of previous year's weather to analyze. So as a class, they write down questions, and then students are broken up into pairs and asked to answer those questions in their science notebooks. And some of the questions included how much precipitation fell, how windy was it, and how cloudy or sunny was it. And this was a great way to also incorporate math skills into the lesson because students were asked to find the average and the median and things like that of the weather. And after a bit of exploring, the students could go back into their notebooks and change or add the clothing types that they started with at the beginning of the lesson, just so they've already looked at the numbers and so they can go back and change their predictions. So after going through the data and correcting predictions, students were then asked to do a bit of explaining. And explaining is the third step in our sequence. The teacher asked the students to come up with their own definition of what climate is. And so the most universal definition that the students came up with is climate is what it's usually like in an area during a certain time of year. The teacher still needed to make sure, though, that the students knew the difference between climate and weather. And so she asked the students to explain what weather was, and they explained that weather changes in hours or days, and climate changes during the year. So next, the teacher wants to move on to how location might affect the climate. And we start off with elaborate, which is our next step in the sequence. And it's important to remember that climate differs depending on where you are and what location you're in. So the teacher asked questions regarding the climate in 2 different cities, one from the north and one from the south, and also one of similar latitudes. So the students were then asked to pick 2 cities with similar elevation and latitude to investigate. The students were then sent off into pairs to collect average monthly temperatures and monthly precipitation. And then the teacher taught the students how to incorporate line graphs and other graphs to organize their data, which was nice so they can include that in their notebooks. And the students made graphs of their data and displayed their findings around the room. Then once all the students were finished, they could walk around and see the other students' work and see how it compared to their own data. And the final step was to evaluate what they had learned. A discussion is a great way to do this, and that's what they picked to do in this lesson. The teacher asked why bodies of water help cool and heat the area around them more. And this was just a great way to get students involved and a formative assessment tool for the teacher, because she was able to see what the students were really learning during this time. But she also chose a formative or a summative assessment. She gave the students a map of an imaginary landmass and gave them the tools that they needed, locations, elevations, things like this, and she wanted the students to predict the weather conditions for this after they had learned how to do so. And I just think that's a great way to make sure students actually know what they learned and are able to make predictions better. I just think this is just a great overall 5E lesson plan.